You're tuned to the Nowhere Signal. What you're about to hear was never meant to be found.
The road into Halberd was never on any map. Not one Rowan could find, anyway. He'd heard about the place through an overheard conversation in a dusty train station cafe. An old man with a traveler's coat had whispered it to no one in particular. It's where the clocks forgot to die. That alone was enough to make Rowan curious. He followed half-roads and fog-cloaked paths until a hand-painted wooden sign came into view, nailed crookedly to a leaning post. Halberd, Pop. 6:13. The sign swayed even though there was no wind. Halberd looked like something from an old painting: stone cottages with sloped roofs, weathered lampposts lining cobbled streets, and the ever-present ticking of clocks. Not from one central bell tower, but from nearly every home. A rhythm pulsed through the town, soft, steady, almost imperceptible. Like the heartbeat of something much older. The first thing Rowan noticed was that the bakery smelled exactly like the one from his childhood. The scent of rising dough, burnt sugar, and a hint of orange zest. The second thing he noticed? A woman across the street dropped her keys. Bent to pick them up. Then did it again. And again. Every minute. Precise. He watched her from a bench. The first time, he thought nothing of it. By the fourth repetition, his skin went cold. The same motion. Same pause. Same sigh as she straightened her coat afterward. Rowan stood and crossed the street. "Ma'am," he asked. She looked up at him with a friendly smile. "Yes? Did you just drop your keys?" Her smile didn't change. "Oh dear. Did I?" She looked down. Clumsy knee. She bent to pick them up. They weren't on the ground anymore. She picked up nothing. Still smiled. "I'm always forgetting things," she said, and walked away. Rowan wandered. The village was lovely, eerie, and wrong. Children played hopscotch in perfect loops. A man swept the same patch of sidewalk near the general store, again and again, without any dust ever moving. The church bell never rang, but every clock still ticked. And they all ticked in perfect unison. He checked his phone. 3:17 p.m. Tried to take a photo. The screen glitched. Reset to 3:17. He walked into the small cafe. A bell chimed above the door. "Coffee?" asked the man behind the counter. He was already pouring it. Rowan didn't even answer. "Cream and 1 sugar, right?" The man asked. "How'd you know that?" "You've been coming in every day for the past year," the man said, grinning. Rowan blinked. "No. This is my first time here." The man paused. His smile twitched. "I think you're mistaken." Rowan left the coffee untouched. He continued on foot until he reached the far edge of the village. That's when he saw it. A crooked little shop set back behind 2 twisted trees. No sign out front. But the window displayed clocks. Hundreds of them. Wall clocks. Pocket watches. Cuckoos. Grandfather clocks so tall they curled at the top to fit under the ceiling. Inside, a lamp glowed faintly orange. The door creaked when he pushed it open. And that's when Rowan met him. The man sitting at the bench wore thick spectacles, a dark vest, and a strange silver key around his neck. His hair was white and thin. His fingers were long and delicate, like they'd been shaped by time itself. He didn't look up. "You're late," the man said. What? "You're always late," the old man muttered, winding a small brass pocket watch. "You come in every day at 3:17, and you're always confused." Rowan took a step closer. "How do you know that?" The old man finally looked at him. His eyes were the pale blue of faded ink. "I'm Ellory," he said. "Clockmaker." "And you're Rowan," he added without pause. "You don't belong here. And you never did." Rowan stood in the doorway, the chime of the hanging bell still swaying above his head. Ellory turned back to the table and continued adjusting the gears of a pocket watch, as if Rowan's presence was more of a confirmation than a surprise. Tick. 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 The walls trembled gently with the sound of dozens of clocks keeping perfect, mechanical time. And yet, something about the rhythm felt off. Like every tick had been rehearsed too many times. Rowan finally stepped in fully, letting the door shut behind him. "I don't understand," he said. "No," Ellory replied calmly, "you wouldn't." He motioned to a stool across from him. "Sit." Rowan hesitated, then sat. There was something in the old man's voice, not menace, but weight. Like every word carried a coil of time around it. "You said I come here every day?" Rowan asked. Ellory nodded. "At 3:17 exactly." Rowan pulled out his phone again. 3:17 p.m. Still. Even though it had to be at least 20 minutes since he first walked into town. How long has this been happening? "Years," Ellory said. "Decades, probably. Maybe more. Hard to say anymore." He finished tightening the spring inside the pocket watch and snapped the case closed with a crisp click. "Then how come I've never noticed?" Ellory looked at him, hard. "Because you're the only one who can." Rowan's mouth went dry. "Why me?" Ellory didn't answer. Instead, he stood up, surprisingly steady for a man who looked like he should be using a cane, and gestured toward the back of the shop. "Come." They passed rows of clocks, each one ticking in lockstep. The sound was overwhelming. A mechanical heartbeat that grew louder with every step. At the very back of the room, through a narrow archway, was a separate chamber. This one held only one clock. It stood taller than any grandfather clock Rowan had ever seen. It was made of blackened brass and wood so old it had fossil lines running through it. There were no numbers on the face. Just 3 hands. One short, one long, and one impossibly thin. All unmoving. "This," Ellory whispered, "is the master loop." Rowan stared. "It's not ticking." "No," Ellory said, with a breath that sounded both reverent and bitter. "It ticks only once per cycle." "When does it tick?" "When the day ends." "But it never does," Rowan said. Ellory nodded. "Exactly." They stood there for a moment. Outside, nothing could be heard but the steady hum of the other clocks. In here, it was silent. Rowan turned to him. "You said I don't belong here. What did you mean?" Ellory didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned a small brass dial on the side of the master loop. Something inside the machine clicked faintly. And then he said, "Time isn't broken, Rowan. It's being held. By force." Rowan shook his head. "That's not possible." Ellory gave a thin smile. "Everything is possible when you stop asking the wrong questions." Rowan stepped back, his fingers grazing the cold metal of the master loop. "And who's holding it?" he asked. Ellory looked up at the face of the clock with haunted eyes. Then at Rowan. "You are." Rowan recoiled as if struck. "I? What do you mean I'm the one holding it?" Ellory didn't flinch. He simply turned and walked back toward the main room of the clock shop. Rowan followed, breath shallow, heart pounding in rhythm with the ticking walls. They returned to the workbench where the unfinished watches lay like organs mid-surgery. Ellory sat again, taking a strange hourglass from a drawer. But it was filled not with sand, something darker. More fluid. "It doesn't matter if you remember," Ellory said. "You're still the anchor." "The anchor for what?" "For this." He swept a hand toward the clocks, the village, the day itself. "This moment. This loop. This prevention." Rowan blinked. "I don't understand. Why would I cause this?" "You didn't cause it," Ellory said softly. "You necessitated it." Rowan sat heavily. Ellory tapped the hourglass gently. You ever heard of the pendulum paradox? Rowan shook his head. Imagine time is a pendulum, Ellory said. It swings freely until something pushes it too far. When it does, the weight breaks. Snaps. No swing. No return. Just collapse. Ellory looked Rowan in the eye. You pushed time too far, once. But I haven't, you will. Or, you already did. Depending on which cycle you believe in. Ellory pulled a leather-bound journal from beneath the counter and laid it flat. Inside were pages of neatly drawn schematics, village maps, and circular diagrams with annotations written in black ink and red corrections over top. The loop was built to keep the pendulum from snapping. We reset every day to avoid the moment you trigger it. Rowan's voice was dry. And what's the moment? Ellory turned to the last page. There was no diagram, just a date. Today's date. This is the moment, Ellory whispered. Rowan stood up and paced. This is insane. I know, Ellory replied, strangely calm. No, I mean, how can an entire town be trapped because of me? Ellory opened a small drawer and retrieved a folded newspaper. It was brown and flaking at the edges, but the date was clear, August 4th, 1973. Rowan looked up sharply. That's not today. Ellory nodded. It is. And it isn't. Rowan unfolded the paper. A headline stared back at him. Local man dies in clock tower tragedy. Town devastated. Beneath it was a photo, blurry, monochrome. Rowan stared at it. It was him. That's not possible, Rowan said again, quieter now. It wasn't, Ellory said. Until it was. Time doesn't correct itself. It preserves the wound. Until someone stops it. And you're saying that was you? Ellory gave a crooked smile. I was the surgeon. Not the patient. Rowan sat down again, the air thick and stale. I don't remember any of this. You're not meant to, Ellory replied. But the echoes remain. Outside, the fog pressed heavier against the windows. A soft humming began, like the vibration of something far beneath the ground. The loop is degrading, Ellory said. It's getting harder to hold. The moment is trying to arrive. Rowan looked down at the watch in his hand. 3:17. Still. Always. He looked up at Ellory. So what happens if we don't reset it again? Ellory's expression turned grave. Then we face what comes next. Outside, the sky looked stained. A color that didn't have a name, gray with the edges of something bruised underneath. The village had gone quieter than before. Even the rhythm of the clock seemed hesitant. Like time itself was holding its breath. Ellory was no longer working on any clock. He stood at the window now, his silver key hanging from his neck, unmoving. Rowan broke the silence. What happens if it resets again? Ellory turned slowly. It will buy us one more day. But barely. The cracks are spreading. I've tried everything, looping earlier, looping later, suppressing memory triggers. But you always find your way back to this room. Rowan rubbed his temples. What if we just let it happen? Let the day finish? Ellory's face tightened. You already did. And the world unraveled. He walked over to the master loop clock and placed his hand on it like one would a coffin. You triggered the moment once before, he said. You climbed the tower. You touched the mechanism. And the clock stopped everywhere. Rowan swallowed. Then why bring me back? Because something brought you back, Ellory whispered. I only built the loop. I didn't write the script. He reached into a drawer and removed a faded photograph. It showed the village square, before the fog, before the freeze. Children laughing. A market. A clock tower in the distance. Whole. Not shattered like it was now. You used to live here, Ellory said. People knew your name. You had a family here. Rowan looked stunned. I don't remember any of that. You wouldn't. The first reset wiped you. A failsafe. But it didn't hold. He pointed to the edge of the photo. A house with ivy climbing its brick sides. That was yours. Rowan stared at it for a long time. And then the humming grew louder. Outside, the woman who had been dropping her keys was standing completely still now. The man who swept the sidewalk had let the broom fall. The bakery no longer smelled like anything. The loop was failing. Tell me what to do, Rowan said. Ellory shook his head. I can't. You're the anchor. Only you can finish it or break it. Rowan looked at the master loop. It still hadn't ticked. He stepped toward it, placing his hand on its cold, metallic frame. Something inside it shifted. I could stop this, Rowan said quietly. Yes, Ellory replied. But you'd be stopping everything. Not just the loop. The village. The people. Time here. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're the man who walked away from fate, Ellory said. Twice. Rowan turned to him. What happened the first time? Ellory took a breath that rattled like a clock winding down. You tried to save someone. Rowan blinked. A girl. Your daughter, Ellory said softly. You went up the tower during the storm. The clock was already unstable. You thought if you reset it, it might bring her back. But Ellory didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Rowan's throat went dry. He stepped away from the master loop and stumbled toward the back of the shop. He pushed open the back door, walking out into the fog-stained alley. And standing there was a little girl. She had dark hair. A green ribbon. Eyes like his. She smiled. Hi, Daddy. Rowan fell to his knees. You're not real, he whispered. She tilted her head. Not anymore, she said. But I was. Once. You remember now, don't you? Tears streamed down his face. I remember. And then, in a flicker, she was gone. Like breath on glass. He returned to the shop. Ellory was sitting now, silent. I saw her, Rowan said. Ellory nodded. She always appears when it's close. The loop tries to keep you here. Rowan walked up to the master loop. His hands hovered above the dial. And then he turned it. The ticking stopped. Everywhere. Then, after a pause so long it hurt, the master loop ticked. Once. The clocks in town shattered. Every one. The fog dissolved. The air went sharp with the feeling of something ancient ending. Ellory looked up and smiled. You did it. Rowan swayed. What happens now? Ellory stood. We find out. The sun rose. For the first time in decades, maybe centuries, it truly rose. Not a pale illusion. Not a painted ceiling in the sky. But a warm, blinding light cresting over the hills behind Halberd. The village square looked different now. Cracked. Quiet. Free. Rowan stood in the middle of it, barefoot, holding nothing. No phone. No pocket watch. Even his clothes looked slightly different, as if reality had snapped them into a new texture. The fog was gone. The bakery doors were open. The bell above them chimed from the breeze. But no one came out. No one was there. The people were gone. Not vanished. Just no longer part of this version. They had been echoes, ghosts of repetition. And when the loop ended, they faded with it. All but one. Ellory stood by the shattered remains of his shop, holding the silver key in his hand. He looked younger now. Straighter. Eyes clearer. "You remembered," he said. Rowan nodded. "I remembered everything." Ellory nodded back. "That's all I ever wanted for you." They walked in silence to the foot of the old clock tower. Its doors, long sealed, now creaked open. Inside, the gears no longer moved. The pendulum was still. The mechanism cracked and glowing faintly blue, pulsed once, then dimmed. Rowan stepped in. Ellory didn't follow. "This is where I stop," the old man said. "Why? I only existed to keep the time wound. And now, there's no more time to hold." He smiled, sad and satisfied. "I was a part of the loop. Not the world." Rowan opened his mouth, but Ellory was already fading. Like dust in reverse. Scattering upward. And then he was gone. Rowan climbed the steps of the tower slowly. Each creak beneath his feet felt real now. Heavy. Mortal. At the top, he reached the clock face and looked out across the village. For the first time, the landscape extended beyond the horizon. Fields. Trees. Sky. Movement. The world was no longer ending. He sat at the edge of the tower, legs swinging like a child. He thought about his daughter. Her green ribbon. Her smile. Was she real once? He believed she was. Maybe not here. Maybe not now. But somewhere. He placed the ribbon on the windowsill beside him. He didn't remember picking it up. But it didn't matter. Somewhere behind him, the final hand on the master loop clicked forward. It would never move again. And that was the point. Rowan closed his eyes. He took a breath. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt time move forward.
The nowhere signal will return tomorrow. Until then, sleep light.